Number 1. My name is, was it a sign? All right. We're good to go. All right. Greetings. My name is Tatenda Trinus Dongo, but you can call me the Juggernaut. Welcome to Frankly Speaking webinar, Season 2, Episode number 1. Indeed, the program goes on, and once a program is on Season 2, it means it's now flowing. I'm really excited about this particular session, and as you join us from across the globe, everywhere joining us from, I'm excited to be talking about a pertinent issue for youth today, something that gets them going, especially in line with entrepreneurship and starting and running their own businesses. I'm joined with a formidable panel, my older brothers, all of them. So in Shona, we say, Ndiwana Mkoma Wangu, people that are moving and shaking the industry in terms of finance. So I'm going to take the opportunity to have our panel introduce themselves. I'll only so much as say their names, and then we get to know our panel a bit better. So to our panelists, you just give us your name and your occupation perhaps, and what we are looking forward to in this session or on this panel in terms of capital. So do I start with my left or with my right? Let me start with my left. Mukoma Oliver, could you please introduce yourself, what you do, and just something to expect on this panel?
Thank you very much. Good evening, those who are viewing us. My name is Oliver Habonimana. I'm the head of business banking. I'm with Bank ABC. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mukoma Oliver there. To my right, immediate right, we have Mukoma Tafadwa. Could you please introduce yourself and...
Thank you, Trinos. Good evening to you all. My name is Tafadwa Gwanchinamo. I'm the CEO of the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. I'm not here as a regulator because I understand that the audience, not many of you are already in the markets, but really just to talk about capital and its general environs and how you can access that. I hope I've got good news for you, but I just want to explain to you how the things work, and perhaps from that point of view, I think you can pick it up yourself and see how you can maneuver that. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Komatino, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks, Rinos. My name is Tino Kambasha. I'm the Chief Investments and Corporate Affairs Officer at the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA, which is a new baby that came into life last year. We make investments, a one-stop shop in terms of you starting your business and finding markets and investments for your products. Thank you.
There you have it. This is the panel that we have of experts in 2 words that have come out from their introductions for me: finance and capital. Every time you talk entrepreneurship, you talk of empowerment of youth, you talk of how people need to further their lives, those 2 words always come up. In fact, the one that's most prominent is capital. Do we even understand what the word means? I definitely know that in subjects like accounting and finance, those words can be very ambiguous. Do you need finance at the beginning? Do you need finance to start? Do you need capital? Where do you get it? How do you do it? How do you go about? And that's what we're going to be discussing this evening with this panel of experts. So I'm going to start with the very first question that I'll start with Oliver to my left and say, could you give us an overview, Mr. Banker, as to where SMEs, startups, young people, what are the sources of capital available to them? It could be even nationally, but it could also regionally, internationally. What are the sources of capital available to young people, to startups, to budding entrepreneurs in Zimbabwe today, June 2021?
Thank you, Trinos. Very interesting question. When you are looking for capital, at times you think of banks or some investors from the moon, but people forget you have your personal savings at times. That could be enough as a starting point if you are a startup. There is also what we call love money. You know, you have got a sister, you have a brother, you have an uncle. That person, if they understand your idea and what you're trying to do, you'll be surprised. They will give you some hand and help you with the capital that you're missing. We also have what we call angel money. Those are silent partners. You know, in banks, we say a good idea has got money following it all over. When you have an idea, you'll be surprised. We also have what we call donations. We have got NGOs that give grants, even governments. You'll be surprised what you need to do, 1 or 2 proposals, and boom, you have the capital that you need to start up. Obviously, you have got banks like us. Most people, there's a myth out there. People think you need to know someone, you need to have capital, collateral, you need to pledge your property, but that's not the truth. We are so innovative nowadays. When you want to borrow, as long as we've understood what you are doing, your idea, where the money is going to come from, you'll be surprised. We have also started with incubation. You'll be incubated as a startup, an entrepreneur. We give you the platform to learn. We hold your hand. And obviously, we want to see you booming. We want to also get a piece of your returns. So in brief, those are the common sources of capital that I can share with our viewers right now.
Common sources of capital there coming from Oliver the banker. Just bringing it to my older brothers here on my right. Is that it? This is a question, a pertinent question with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, young people out there. Where do we get the money to start? Any comments from you in terms of startup capital? Can we get it from the banks?
Yeah, so I think what Oliver pointed out is what's available out there. But let's take it in stages. At what stage do we access what money? And with any startup business, I think the first thing that starts is the idea itself, right? And if you ever written a business plan, the first thing that you must address in your business plan is what problem are you solving, right? Is there a need for what you want to do, right? If that problem is clearly spelled out, is clearly understood, I think you're onto something. But with any entrepreneur or anyone who's starting a business, they think that they've rediscovered the light bulb. You think that my idea is so unique, it's so great, it's so grand and so forth. So I think that's the first thing. So you must identify, no business exists today unless it's solving something that society needs or a market needs. The second question is that how are you going to solve that problem? So you've identified the problem, you've articulated it, you've understood it, how are you going to solve it? Now, if you don't answer those questions properly, then there's no business to talk about. No one is going to listen to you because people with capital, with money to fund your business, hear these things all the time, every single day. So like Oliver said, the first thing that you've got to do is that you've got to start somewhere, right? And a lot of youngsters that I come across, they want someone to fund an idea. It's not enough, right? They want to see that you've done something yourself, right? And I don't think there's any entrepreneur out there who's looking to start a business with capital requirements of $10 million plus. It starts small, right? So what have you done, right? And always, I think it's always good to approach someone after your idea has been done, you've got some traction, you've done something yourself. Either you've made a sample, you've really tested it that it can be manufactured, it can be produced at a reasonable cost. You've looked at what's out there in the market. You've looked at what else is being done. Because I'll tell you, unless you are really someone who's going to change the world, most ideas already exist in the market. There is nothing that you can say that this is totally brand new. So what is it about you that's going to set everything apart? So you've got to start yourself. I think you read these biographies of Bill Gates and all these guys starting in a garage, right? That's where it's got to start, right? No matter what product you're making, what idea you have, you've got to start somewhere. So that when you go to the next person and say that, look, I've now done, this is as far as I can go. I now need money to go to the next stage. I now need to rent out a factory to buy equipment, but this is what I've been making with the very basic things. In the market, I can't satisfy that. So like Oliver said, I think the stages of it is that you've got to start with your own pockets, right, with your savings. If you don't have, look, no one is going to give you money from scratch. Family and friends, obviously, they are good because they are people that can also listen to you, right? Coming to me a stranger and say that, look, I got a brilliant, I don't know you and I don't know what you are, but your family and friends, they know the sort of person you are, the sort of passion you have, and they're the ones who can really get you going. And at that stage, I think that's the stage where you should be now building your prototypes or your samples, or if you're making, I don't know, clothing, you've got a little store at the flea market and so forth. That's where it's got to start, right? But you've got to then show that if you want capital, what is it for, right? Do you want to expand for the sake of expanding? Have you seen a bigger market out there, but because of your limitations in terms of capital is concerned, you can't go any further. So therefore, you now go to these places. And way to go, I think, like Oliver said, there is a plethora of opportunities that are out there. Formal institutions are going to deal with formal people. So you can't just go there without having established a track record. They don't know you, like I said. If it was your uncle, your friend, okay, they know you. They can give you that grace. But if you're going to go to a bank or to an angel investor, they want to see something on the ground, right? So I think this is where a lot of youngsters get it wrong, and then they get frustrated. But if you read those stories of those successful people, it was not an easy journey, right? Maybe the first 5-10 years, they were really struggling, but they believed that this product that they were making, this thing that they were starting, has potential, has a future, and sooner or later, they will make that breakthrough and they'll have that breakthrough. Yeah, so I'll stop there for now, but okay, essentially is that I understand first of all that where are you, right?
Where are you?
The idea comes, is it a good idea? Test the idea, back it up with your own actions, with your own, limited as they may be, your own capital, and then from there on, create traction, and then go out and then start investing. Later on, I guess we can talk about how you then bring shareholders in and so forth, because that's really our space in the capital markets.
And we really want to get to that one. So I think we've heard a bit of, the banks coming in, NGOs, some government platforms that are there, and these options that I hear of you putting your house in order. But I want to bring a question to Nkomatino with something in mind. Yes, we mentioned family and friends, but for example, my natural instinct is if I'm getting started and I see an uncle with a Range Rover, I assume he's going to give me some capital because he's rich. But many times you go there, you don't get a cent. Why am I not getting a cent from my uncle who assumably can afford it? Because we've mentioned perhaps the sources are supposed to be there, but we're not getting money from there. My question, perhaps coming to Tino, perhaps in line with that and what they were talking about, what are you looking for as an investor in an entrepreneur? What should I have in order? What should I do? And also perhaps speaking into that, what's the sources of capital? Before I even then go, what can I do? What is an investor looking for?
I think Mukoma Tafadzwa really articulated very well. First of all, rich people or people with money or wealth did not become wealthy by giving away their money. I think this is the point. It's a fact, okay? So first of all, when you come looking for capital, whether it's from an individual or a bank, an asset management or an insurance company, you need to understand that that person has an option, either to give you that money or put it into a safe place. Whether it's treasury bills, give it to the bank for an interest or a money market instrument, or buy property, buy cement, buy bricks. So you need to bring a compelling story that makes sense to convince that person to bring that money to you. So I think the problem that we have is that a lot of I won't say youth, because I think that it doesn't cover everything. I think it's the new generation that's coming through, is that we don't necessarily understand putting in the time. And like what Nkoma Tafadzwa said, deal with what you have, the small things that you have. Give a small pilot project. So, okay, there's some things that are free. Information is free. Market information is free. There's a Zimstats office in town. You can go there and find out what is being exported to which countries, you know, and in what quantities, in what quality. That's free. You know what I mean? You can go get that information. So I think like you need to put in some sort of effort and to show that my idea or my project is bringing in this type of return. And I think that's the work that we need to put in. In terms of looking for different sources of capital, there's an array of sources of capital. And we can look at it, and I think Kwame Oliver mentioned, family angel investors and so forth. There's different arrays, but I think the principle is what is compelling about your story that makes it unique and diverts capital from a safe place. I'll give you an example. Every time we have a global catastrophe, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's hurricanes in the United States, whatever it is, capital flies back to government bonds and they pull money out of everywhere. South Africa, they pull money out of your Allen Greys, your Investex, they pull money out, which affects us because those companies then invest in Zimbabwe. And then all of a sudden, you have an Africa investment environment crashing because there's been a global environment that has nothing to do with Africa at all. So, whenever there's a bit of a shakeup, money runs to safety. So what we need to do is to come up with a compelling story that makes sense and that is attractive to the investor.
There you have it, coming up with a compelling story. You as the aspiring entrepreneur, as the budding entrepreneur, or perhaps you've been in business for a while, but you'd like to get more capital and funding. I would like to come to Oliver to add on to that, but with a question. So we've got sources of income that were mentioned, the banks, financial institutions, your family, your friends, and so on and so forth. But as alluded to, maybe with that example of family and friends, there's a lot of young people that have approached family and friends and didn't get anything. And a lot of the reasons why were talked about by Tino. Some have walked into banks and walked out empty-handed. I think if we say some, it's an understatement, majority, if not all. What are the main reasons why we are walking out with nothing? I think that's why I said it's adding on to what he said, because it's already mentioned, and also Nkoma Tafazo also mentioned some of the reasons that you're not prepared in this sense. Why are people walking out of banks with empty-handed?
Thank you, Trifos. There are a couple of reasons. You have got an idea, you think you can make money tomorrow. The next thing, you think you deserve more money or you want more money. You walk into a bank, and boom, you want the money tomorrow. There is no planning, there is no information. It's just, money that you require is capital. There are a lot of things that we look at as banks. Do you have a solid plan? Have you put together what's on your mind to pen and given us, the information? When we are assessing, when we are looking at the credit worthiness, we also need to look at your trading history. What have you been doing? You want money today, do you even have an account? What is your market looking like? When we give you money, tomorrow we want you to start paying us. How are you going to pay? You don't have the market. We always talk about our farmers these days, because your neighbor is doing tomatoes. All of a sudden, you also want to start doing tomatoes. You don't have a market. You don't know what it costs. You don't have the experience. The next thing, you also want to get money from a bank. So all those things require information. That's why I talked about incubation. Now we have got an ignition hub where those kind of startups, entrepreneurs come through, we take them through some of the things that they need to go through first before they approach us for money. And at times, you actually think you need money when there's no need for capital at that moment. Tafazo mentioned it earlier. What reasons are you giving yourself to wanting to borrow? Have you taken into account the cost of borrowing? What are your cash flows looking like? Have you done a budget? So some of those are the reasons that people are frustrated. They either don't want to approach us, they approach us a bit too late, and they get disappointed.
Wow. There you have it. I came across some radical people. I think it's not even radical at all, saying the cheapest commodity in the world is an idea. And some went a step further and said, even a baby born today is an idea. So it's not the idea. I think what I've got so far, if you've got your pen and your notebook, you must have taken bucket loads of notes so far. We heard the sources of finance, but I'm hearing a lot of lack of preparedness from those that are looking for the money. Have you gone to Zimstats? Have you researched on your product? Have you done a business plan? What have you done? Anyway, Mkoma Tafazo mentioned, have you put some skin in the game? What have you done so far? So I want to bring a question to Tafazo in line, maybe not in line with that, but to speak more to these people that need capital and funding. What are the risks associated with borrowing and getting money and, you know, coming? Because we're coming with all the passion and positivity, but what's the risk factor? I think Koma Oliver mentioned a bit on it to say, yes, will you be able to pay back? But could you explain to us, aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe even existing entrepreneurs who need more money, what are the risk elements to consider before you go out and look for capital?
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. But before I get to that, I just want to, touch on something a little bit more. I think we're speaking here about, why banks don't lend money to small businesses. I think historically as well, I think in this country, we've gone through a lot of phases in the financial services industry. We've been through hyperinflation, banks have failed and so forth. So, and also, I think the informal sector is spoken about quite a lot. And to the extent that it now affects the mindset, not only of the lenders of capital, but also the borrowers. So before these two can come together, they need to be common ground, common understanding of the rules of the game. If your mindset as a small business is you are an informal person, right? You are used to making money. Now you've made money and but your things are not in order, right? To tell that story to a bank, it's going to be very, very difficult. So the risk that the banks are looking at it, is to say that why is it, what risk do you face as an entrepreneur yourself? This is what I spoke about track record, right? Now, you need some sort of order in your business, right? Keep the records, right? If you're going to tell your story that, look, I started 3 years ago with nothing, but I've now, I bought a house in this place, I bought a stand, I bought this, I got married, I did a big wedding, I did all these things. But where are the records, right? The bank is going to want to see that, okay, your sales from day one have progressively grown, right? You know how to manage your costs, and your cash flow is there. So I think banks have very simple formulas and algorithms in their system. You give them information, they punch it into that, and it's either red, green, or whatever amber it is, and that's the starting point. Now, unless you've got information or data that they can verify and say that, yes, this person started 2 years ago, and the books of accounts are actually there. We can actually see that day one, this person, and also from the bank's point of view, it gives them a comfort that this person here, if you're going to borrow money for us to pay back in over 3 years, it's the sort of person who, in 3 years' time, you'll still be able to do this. But if you got someone who doesn't keep books, who doesn't keep records, you think, okay, you might have a very good quarter, good month, and you think that, look, I'm good for it. But come the 6th, 7th month, your cash flows are bad and there is no form of planning. So I like this incubator project that they have at the bank, okay, he's speaking about. It prepares people from that mindset that business is about planning for tomorrow, right? Today, yes, you've made money. We published a book, I'll give you copies of that. It's called Investment 101. And out of that, we also did a drama based out in Gweru. Fascinating play. I never knew that. I don't speak much Ndebele, but it's spoken English on Ndebele and it's interchangeable. And it's about a young man, right, who's out in Mkoba. He's staying with his parents. He made his girlfriend pregnant and he comes and lives with him. But and the father, I think, does, small things. He's retired. And the father keeps saying to him that, look, we've got a plot out there in the Midlands somewhere. Come, let's do farming and so forth. But this young man has got an idea. He's got an app that he wants to develop. And so the story tracks this young man's journey, going to look for capital and ask him these things. What have you done? Keep the records, do this and that, the prototypes, and up to a stage where he now gets the formal investors, like Tino spoke about, the insurance company and pension funds, giving him some seed money. And ultimately, since we're capital markets themed institution, he lists on a stock exchange. So I think I really recommend it. It's on our website. I mean, you can download that. The book again is in audio version as well. There's a PDF version as well. But this story here just sums up the mindset of a young entrepreneur in Zimbabwe who's got all these things, the very question that you're asking, that, look, you tell us all these things, but they don't work, but through that dramatization of his situation, you get to a point where you begin to understand that it's not that the banks don't want to give you money, but again, it's not the bank's money, they must also account to other people why they gave this particular person that money and so forth. Yeah, so I think the risk, going back to your question, is that of the entrepreneur is that you don't want to take on things that you can't pay back, right? I think all of us at some point have borrowed money. And in our own minds, in our simple calculations, you know how much you can borrow, right? And it's the same with a business. And with a business, you can only get to that stage if you really know and you've been keeping records of your business and you understand your business. Only then should you then have the confidence to say that, look, I think I can borrow so much, and every month from my cash flows or from my sales, I should be able to make repayments of this amount, right, including interest and all that.
I think that was an interesting insight there, giving a lot of detail, also speaking to the entrepreneur themselves and putting more preparation into them preparing themselves for the money, for the investment. I want to shift the dynamic a bit, bringing it to Nkomatino. There's another element that I've heard conversations about, to say, we talk about risk appetite of entrepreneurs and stuff, but I want to look at investors and think, is there specific businesses or maybe profitable businesses that they are more fond of sponsoring, as opposed to, I want to drive down to ethical considerations here, like Trinus has come up with a business that's really going green, and it's gonna, make an impact on the environment, things like, social governance and things like that. Are investors keen to be providing capital and sponsoring such businesses, even if they're not perhaps profitable, if I can put it that way, or extremely profitable, or a high return on investment, but it's more on the social and the ethical side of things? Because I've had questions in those lines and saying, I think, there's nothing in it for us. Our business is not that profit-making business, and investors are not too keen. What's the response there?
Yeah, that's a very interesting space to play in, and definitely there is a market for it. So, and I don't know if you've been reading the papers, there's stuff like the Green Fund, where investors are willing to maybe look at a longer period of time of return for the greater good. So for us at Zida, we definitely also, when we evaluate any projects or any public-private partnership agreements or joint ventures with government, we definitely look at what is the green effect on the environment, what is the social implication, the skills transfer to the people, the employment that you're making within that community. Those are huge things in community development, whether it's hospitals and so forth. So when we even look at investments coming into the country, we are now looking at that social benefit. So definitely there is an edge to that. But I think just taking it back a bit, we must remember, like what Nkomatafadz was saying again, that money needs to be accountable for, because it's not free money. You must understand that for an asset management company to give you money, it's your grandparents that have deposited that money with them as a pension. The bank, it's me as the depositor, banking with Bank ABC, and I've given him, my salary has gone into his account, and then you are coming on the other side and wanting to borrow my money. So you better have a good story. You know what I mean? So, you have to be accountable. So it doesn't matter whether it's green. Obviously, there's cheaper money or grants that come from, first world countries because, they feel bad because they've polluted the whole world. So, they feel bad. So they'll give grants so they make themselves feel a little bit better, whatever. But, they'll give you grants and here and there, right? To say, okay, fine, we want to help the children, Zarabani, or build this hospital here because this money feels bad. So instead of giving you commercial rates of between 6 and 10%, we'll give you interest rate of maybe 3%. There is money like that. Okay. It's not a lot, but it exists.
It exists.
It exists.
That's the question right there.
But you still need to
talking about that
account for it.
existence and maybe Mkuma, yes.
But I think your question was, what are investors looking for? I think the first thing, okay, as Tino said, is that investors don't want to lose money, right? So, but like he's saying, there are various themed type of investments. But as an entrepreneur, once you start going into those areas, again, the people who've created those pools of funds are not really business oriented. So if you want to be a billionaire, those are not your sort of funders, because they're not really in it. It's more for the social good, right? But so if you are really someone who cares about the environment or is really more about the social issues, then yes, maybe I think those are the funds you can go to. But you tend to find that it's no longer really about the business, but ultimately, so it's not about the bottom line, right? So they're looking to maybe make the world a better place, maybe help a particular social group, that's underprivileged and so forth. So think about that as an entrepreneur. You can't take your purely commercial business and go and access that kind of money. It's not their thing. They would rather deal with NGOs, for that. But there are certain instances where these purely commercial business interests intersect with those social aspects. And it's a space that, yes, there could be some money there. Generally, you tend to find that, like Tino said, it's not much money. It might not get you started, but it will certainly buttress your business and give you some breathing space, so to speak. Thanks.
Wow, profound insights there coming from our panel. I want to come to Mkoma Oliver this side. When you go out there on the ground, you hear a different story of people complaining that there's no access to some of these grants, NGO funds, and so on and so forth. And people go so far as to say you need to be connected to get them. Do you need to be connected, even if you put it on an academic point of view, to say, do you need to have perhaps even established a certain level of networks, or I can say of socializing and stuff to get access to some of these things? Or is it sheer ignorance on the side of the budding entrepreneurs to get information? Because you hear there's a grant that has come out, there's an NGO that came yesterday, it's got grants, and then the next thing you're hearing, we didn't get any of those, what happened? Is it true? Or what can be done to have youths and young entrepreneurs, if it's their ignorance, perhaps getting the correct knowledge, approaching the correct institutions? We had institutions like Zimstad. I can go there tomorrow and find no one at Zimstad. So I think there's a lot of homework to be done there. But why are people complaining? Is it their ignorance, or it's lack of access to it, or maybe they're not connected?
Good question. So I would say it's lack of information. Obviously, when you approach some of these NGOs, even the government, you not get a grant out of the blue. You need to be organized. When they give you that money, what are you going to do? Do you even have a bank account? You need to account. Tino Interfasto spoke about those things. If you are not, you don't have a plan, or you are not organized, there's no cash flow, there's no projection, there's no team which has got skills, obviously they will say no. And the next thing, you then want to come to the bank and borrow against something that is not profitable. Tino mentioned it. We are not charity. Unfortunately, we are, we are into business. So if it's a business idea or it's a passion, sometimes we confuse things. I like IT, like this gentleman who are taking pictures here. They like taking pictures. At what point are you going to commercialize that idea, right? If you want to go into the environment, is it business, or you're doing for passion, or you're doing for, for the next generation? So if you are properly organized, you have got a set of proper documents that are required for you to get in that space, then yes, go for it. But because your friend or someone that you know has done it, you then think you can copy and just do it yourself. I'll tell you absolutely no. You are being naive, you're actually wasting time.
Being naive and actually
guess also
wasting
maybe
time. I want to bring it to Nkoma Tafadzwa. You can add on.
Yeah, so I think about knowing people give up too easily, you know. And I also ask that how many times have you tried to access this capital, right?
Yes.
Right. If you're determined, if you really believe in what you're doing, look, you could be told no 10 times, you know, maybe the 15th, 20th time is going to happen for you. So I think also there's a tendency that I think there's just so much prior negative news that we're hearing that, look, it doesn't work. And you go there the first time and then they tell you, no, I think it doesn't work. So I say that persistence pays. Again, you know, I like to think that for any budding entrepreneur, read about people who've really succeeded from extraordinary circumstances, right? Those people, it didn't happen overnight. They probably turned down, even in the advanced markets, you know, US and so forth, many times, right? But they never gave up. And also, if your first business fails, I mean, does this mean that you're a failure? Actually, there's another adage, you know, that says that first failure, that's your school fees. You've now learned your lesson, right? Yeah. Yeah. So first fail. I mean, I was an asset manager for many, many years, and you are not really an asset manager until you've lost money. Now you know the value of money, right? You are more careful. So it's the same thing again with going and knocking on these doors. That how many times have you gone? If they say no, understand why are they saying no, right? Right. Go back and say that, okay, you told me about this, and also ask them, right? So you've gone to the bank and say that, look, I think I've done my business plan. Here it is. Look at it, please. And then they say, no, this is not that. Go and do it, right? Revise it, come back and say that, look, I think I've now done it. What do you now think? But each of that rejection must be a lesson to you. If you're not learning from why they're telling you no, you know, then I don't think you really go in and embrace failure, right? Embrace failure. I mean, I think Apple is now a widely known business, but if you read the life of Steve Jobs, I mean, they even fired him from at Apple at some point, but that didn't stop him. He came back, you know, he had time to convalesce, and when he came back, I think he was sharper, you know, and so forth.
Yes.
And again, it's the same with business, right? There are ups and downs, and a down doesn't mean that, you know, okay, it's not a knockout. Okay, yes. Beat that count of 8, get up, and you know,
and proceed.
But
I think you've stimulated an interesting question in my mind, which I want to bring to Komatino. Failure. I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, talking about how failure builds you as an entrepreneur. But here's my issue. And as I ask this question, so I'm going to be open up to the people on Zoom. I'm also going to open up to those on Facebook and WhatsApp to entertain questions now, but I've got a question that has come up. So I've gone to the bank.
Yep.
The bank has given me the money.
Yep.
And I've put up something against the bank in the form of collateral, and I've lost all the money, failed, and I've learned my lesson. But I want to now get back on my feet and resume. But even what I had in terms of collateral is now taken away and stuff. Where can we strike a balance between failure and collateral? Because it's missing somewhere. And I've genuinely learned my lesson. And any entrepreneur will tell you business is tough and laced with failure. But the moment I fail and learn my lesson, they want their collateral and I'm out. How can we strike balance? Is it the correct institutions to go to, or perhaps maybe when you're starting out and not much collateral, you can go to entrepreneurs maybe to fund you? How do you strike the balance between failure, learning your lesson, and not being pulled down or maybe destroyed by the bank in terms of,
And like I was saying when Mkomatafaz was speaking, fail means first action in learning, right? So you need to think outside the box. When you look at business, right? Don't look at it as a source of capital. I've got a good idea. I'm the smart one. Hey, Dipe Mari, try to give me this money. That's not how it works, right? You need to also look at it. So in that process that you borrowed this money, you provided a product or a good or a service to an individual or a corporate, right?
Yes.
So go to that corporate and tell them to give you terms, right? You've shown them that you can deliver. Don't look at it as a one-sided thing to say, I am only going to bank ABC and I'm getting capital, right? You can get credit terms. There's so many other ways along that line, that production line, that you can extend. So I'll give you an example. So let's say, you've delivered something into a supermarket or a retailer, and they're supposed to pay you after 30 days. And you say, listen, guys, I'm starting out. Here's my story, right? I've delivered ABC. Here are my numbers. Here are the numbers I've shown you. Can I get my money tomorrow? Because I need to restock and the bank is on my story. So let me come through, assist me. So you shouldn't look at it from a one-sided way or a one-sided point of view that it's this one institution that can solve my problems and the banks don't want to give me money, therefore I can't do what I need to do. You need to look at it, maybe the person that you need to deliver that good to can extend you a credit or a payment facility that makes sense to you, or an advance even. So you really need to look at it from a holistic point of view. So that failure must be the first action in learning. And then from that point, you can take it forward.
You can take it forward. And I like a word that Komatino keeps saying, it's think outside the box. And someone further say, think as if there's no box at all, because as long as there's reference to a box, we think like that. We're getting questions now coming in, and remember, the guys on Zoom, people on our Facebook, and with a WhatsApp here, start bringing in your questions. So there's a question from Komata Padzwa. So Mr. Chinamo, you spoke about the listing of businesses on the stock exchange. Would you have plans to have a small capital stock exchange that perhaps allows relatively small businesses to list? This is a question from Runyararo Ndoro. I'm assuming he's a young, aspiring or budding entrepreneur. I was about to also ask a similar question. Maybe let's put mine there as well. At what point do I start thinking stock exchange? Or maybe buying shares and stuff. Is it a time when you're too young in business, or right from the start you can go bit by bit? So give us more insight on this form of business, because I'm also aware some say businesses raise capital by going on a stock exchange. So there's a lot of misconception or lack of information there. Give us more education there.
Okay. Yeah. So the story to listing really again starts from what we've been talking about here, the idea, how it then starts and then moves into a bigger business and so forth. The ultimate destination for any business in terms of capital raising is the public markets. A stock exchange simply saying that you are now so well run, so well managed that you can convince anybody to buy shares into your company or to become a shareholder in your company. So how do you achieve that? So whether you are in a small business or a large company, I think your track record is the first thing that you must build. Okay. Now, most requirements for most stock exchanges is that they want a track record of audited financial statements of 5 years. Now, let's explain that. We're talking here about that when you go to people, they want to see that track record. So here, when you list, you are really soliciting money to capitalize your business from people you don't know. They don't know you as well. So the only way that the two of you are ever going to have a form of understanding is that they need to see something tangible to say that, yes, this person is in open. They've got people outside the business coming in to inspect how they're doing, and they can vouch that indeed they've been making this kind of money, right? Listing also, exchanges don't list unprofitable businesses. So your first few years, there must be years of profit. Right. So the only way that you can demonstrate that is by keeping good set of financial statements. And once you go to the listing stage, it's more about how the company is run, right? What are the structures that you've put in place in your business to run that business? When you're starting out as an entrepreneur, as a small business person, yourself and a few friends would be fine, right? But once you start now going out into the public markets to look for money from outsiders, they need more than that. So I think, so now to the question itself, right now, there have been ideas, discussions around an SME stock exchange. Now, the requirements don't really fall away as such, right? You are still soliciting money from people that don't know you and you don't know them as well. So they need that. So I think the fact that your business must be formalized, to the hilt properly in terms of registrations, the company's office, your tax authorities, your NASAs and so forth, I think all that is done. There must be a discernible track record. So, and the only way that unfortunately in business, accounts or financial statements is what communicates most to people outside your business. And those accounts have to be verified by an external person, and in this case, it's auditors. So that will not fall away. With most exchanges, how much you want to raise, I think then would determine whether you want to go to the small exchange or you want to go to the big exchange, right? So if you want to go to the small exchange, they're looking at maybe more reasonable amounts of money. But also before that, I would say that before you even go to an exchange to list, Tino spoke about the institutional investors. If you can convince those, right? So for a stock exchange, they're looking at a minimum number of shareholders of 300, right? But you don't have to go that way, first of all. The story I spoke about, the greatest story that we've dramatized.
Yes.
That's the first, okay, so listing in the true sense is 2 stages. You start your business, you capitalize yourself, maybe with a loan from a bank and so forth. Then the first step is to just look for outside shareholders. They need not be many. There could be 5, 6, right? So I would say that, think about that, first of all, that with the business that I now have, can I go to 5 pension funds or 5 asset managers and ask them to give me money? Those are the guys who are going to set you straight. You run with those people for 3, 4 years, they'll formalize your business properly because you are now accountable and responsible to people who are outside your business. Once, and those people always want an exit mechanism, a way of selling that shareholding or their profits out of it. And normally this is where stock exchange listings come. So once you've had experience of reporting your business performance and failures to people who've put money into your business, but at a smaller, more confined group, I think you are now ready for a listing. Okay. So I wouldn't jump straight from me and my wife and my brother, yes, doing very well, to sitting in front of a room like this one and accounting to 600 shareholders. It just that will be too much for you. So I think take it slow. So the first step is that find institutional investors who will then insist on certain standards of your business before you go out. Or before you go out
there. I think it was well laid out there in terms of you can't really hop onto the stock exchange and talk about, creating that public offering for your business and then raising funds off of. Though I've read of interesting companies in Zim, which 6 months down the line from setting, poof, they went on the stock exchange and poof, some of the biggest companies we have today. I want to bring a question to Mkoma Oliver, coming from Rebecca Bunga. When starting a business, right, I love the word she's there because it exists in any human being when starting out something, fear. So she says, when starting a business, asking for capital, right? What is your greatest fear and how can you manage the fear? Mr. Banker.
Yeah, very good question from Rebecca. So literally starting a business, you are taking a risk.
Yes.
That's one thing for sure. You can't run away from that. So for me and for us as Bank ABC, what we've now realized, you can't do it alone. You shouldn't be fearing. You shouldn't think that the journey is all by yourself. I mentioned the incubation. We have got an ignition hub. Come through, right? Okay. We go through the journey together. We will hold your hand. There's no need to fear. If it's something that is missing in the write-up or whatever that you want to do, we will advise you. We have the necessary experience. We also connect you to the market. That's the most important thing. Yes. Normally, the fear is that when I start, it's a service, who am I going to be selling to? So we have that capacity. And yes, we are not the only ones. The whole family here, they have done that all their life.
Yes,
so
yes.
Just make sure you are not doing it on your own. Find the right partners, find the right bank.
Yes.
And you are good to go.
And there you go. You are good to conquer and overcome your fear, because fear creeps in all the time and it stifles entrepreneurship. I want to come with a question to Mkoma Tino. There's another person here who says, what advice, all right? I like that word because as an entrepreneur, you need bucket loads of those. What advice do you have to young entrepreneurs in Zimbabwe, right? Given the ever-changing regulatory and financial environment. In fact, I want all panelists to answer on that one because I know Mkoma Tafazo is in a space where there's a lot of regulations to talk about, and I know he's exposed to a lot of regulations as well as Mkoma Tino. Mkoma Tino, what advice do you have to young entrepreneurs given the ever-changing regulatory and financial environment? I know there's a document that came out recently. Unfortunately, also with social media, I don't know what's true, what's not, but some turn out to be true, but there's a lot of changes. So we'll start with Mkoma Tino, and then we'd like to also hear your voices, Mkoma Oliver and Mkoma Tafazo, on regulations and change in an environment in terms of capital and starting your business or running it. Yeah.
And that's a very fair point. That's a very fair question. And I think to answer that, I would like to turn to a story. And it was about 10 years ago, I was still in my Emara days. And I was at a conference with Shingai Mtasa. For those of you who know Shingai Mtasa, he's the owner of Masawara, from TA Holdings, all the Crestas and so forth. And there was a change in law or currency. It was 2008, 2009. Yeah, so it was a bit more than 10 years. So I said to him, you're running so many businesses, you've got Sable Chemicals, you've got this, you've got this. How are you doing it? Like, are you not worrying about it? His answer to me changed the way that I view things generally. He says to me, young man, look at me and look at my age and look at you. I am planning for 10 years going forward, right? I am not looking at the micro, right? My plans are big term and I'm planning on a bigger scale. So everything I do on a day-to-day scale. So I don't look at the small changes that I hear. I look at, okay, am I producing? Am I infiltrating the market on a day-to-day basis? If I've sold 10 units, am I selling 11? Am I selling 12, right? And he said to me, put on the blinkers and focus on what you are doing. Don't worry too much about your environment because the environment will always change. It doesn't matter what country it is. Look at America, right? You had this whole Trump era, which was just weird, right? And then suddenly Biden comes in and everything's flipped. Now imagine businesses that were there before, from Obama era, there during Trump era, that are still there during Biden era, who knows, Camilla might take over, who knows what might happen, right? So for you, you need to stay focused. Look at Apple, they never changed their focus, they never changed their strategy. iPhone 12 came out, iPhone 12 Pro came out, whether it was Trump there or whoever, it still came out. So I think it's about that focus.
Yes.
Focus on the micro.
Yes.
Don't focus on the bigger picture.
On the bigger picture.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I mean, hey, how much focus do you have as the entrepreneur? What's in your sight and what do you stick to as an entrepreneur? And as we say that, I would like to say for all those on Zoom, please raise your hand so that we can take note of your questions and then we can ask your questions on the WhatsApp link. So I want to come to Mkoma Tafazo and then Mkoma Oliver around that. And I'm aware Mkoma Tafazo is exposed to a lot of decision-making bodies and is with the decision makers, even at a national level, talking regulations. What must the young entrepreneur or even the starting out entrepreneur think in terms of ever-changing regulations, or what's your take and to add on to Mkoma Tino's?
So unfortunately, I think with any business, with any economy, there are rules and regulations and they keep changing. One could argue, is it for the good or for the better, or for the worse? It's a subject for the debate. But the main question is that when something is announced, do you understand what that thing means, right? Who is giving you this information? You said that there's a lot of discussion on WhatsApp and so forth. Is that your source of information? Now, I think once you are dealing with capital that is outside your control, or you've invited shareholders into your business, they'll ask you the same thing. Okay, there's this new law that came out. Okay, how is that going to affect your business? Right. So this is where I then say that reach out to as wide a group as possible understand any simple piece of legislation that's come up. It could be a new tax code. It could be, I don't know, a new NAS or something. Right? It's going to affect your business, and there are penalties there and so forth. So I think once you're in business, you must know what's going on. You must not be ignorant of the law, because it's going to affect you. And how you understand that law is also going to determine whether or not people have belief that, like Tino is saying, that as things are changing, your business can weather that storm as well. Yeah, so I think if you were not reading the news or these SIs and so, and there are a lot in this country, I think once you're in business, you must, yes. If you're importing things, whenever there's a new budget statement, read it. If you don't understand it, go to someone who does.
Can explain.
If you borrowed money from the bank, go there and say that guy is, okay, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not whatever, but there's this new law. What does it mean to my business? Right? Banks will tell you that. Go to an accounting firm, and say that, look, there's this thing. What does it require me to do? How do I stay compliant? Only when you've understood that law can you then act like Tino is saying. But if you don't understand it, okay, yourself, you've just heard that there's a new SI 127 and saying that it's going to be bad for people dealing with foreign currency. But have you read it? Have you understood it? Right? So it's those people who take that time to understand, and laws, okay, it's like your competitor, right? If you're in whatever space of business that you are in, and someone sets up shops doing exactly the same thing as you next door, it's incumbent upon you to understand how these guys are going to impact your business, right? What, how they're different from you, their strengths, all those things. It's the same with the new law. It could be something that, it looks ominous, threatening. So, but for you to fight it or to live with it, you must understand what that thing is. So please, and I'll tell you that if you've borrowed money from institutional investors, they understand that you're young, maybe not as experienced. Go there and say that, look, does this mean that I'm closing shop? If not, what does this mean? What's the impact of this? Do I need more business? Do I need to change my strategy and so forth? But a lot of people act on hearsay. Yes. They don't really sit down. And if it's a reserve bank thing, go there. They with the public relations thing and say that, look, I run a business from wherever I do it, yes, and I don't quite understand this. Can someone explain this to me? Yeah. So, and unfortunately, laws will keep coming.
It's dynamic.
Yeah, it's dynamic. But
any environment you can
understand it. Yeah,
understand it. So I would bring the last issue to Mkoma Oliver, and then we'll have the last word from each panelist. At the end of the day, after all this grilling and information, you want to get that call to action to say, what do we do after this? So there was just a minute each to wrap up. But Mkoma Oliver, another issue, I think it's the regulations where is currency. Our currency. And I speak from, I came across a young people who have family and friends, right, potential investors from other country, but now they seem to be holding back their capital, even if it's $100 because like, your environment, we don't trust putting our money there because you might wake up and then there's no currency. What sort of mindset or advice would you give young people in terms of going forward with the current currency issue and their lack of trust and maybe imagination that there's a volatile currency? What should people think in terms of currency and their prospective doing a change as young entrepreneurs? Or should they not think about that and just drive forward?
Yeah, you actually answered yourself. When you know what you want,
yes,
you have to focus. If you concentrate on wrong information, obviously you lose it. Currency, whichever currency, if your product is sellable, right, you still make money. So my advice to the young people is focus and get the right information from the right places.
Right information, yes.
I'll give you an example. When you have an account, for instance, I will talk about us as Bank ABC. You assign a relationship manager or a relationship officer. It's a phone call away, or an email, or WhatsApp. Just find out this new SI, what does it mean for my business? You have to be compliant. You don't want Zimra to come and close you down because you were lazy to ask the question. So those were the few words that I'll tell to the listeners and the entrepreneurs.
The listeners. So take that as the last word coming from Koma Oliver. So I'm coming from my extreme right. In 30 seconds, Koma Isaac, your last words to these entrepreneurs, then also Koma Tufadzwa in 30 seconds to close off and give your last words to our entrepreneurs watching.
Tino, is that Tino? I think in 30 seconds, stay focused. Really keep a record of what you're doing. If you want to do a project on a 5 hectare or 10 hectare, start with half a hectare, okay? Proof of concept. Stay focused, find out the market, find out the numbers, put your books together. And when you are organized, you can even approach your government departments, you can approach your local authorities and say to them, look, we are young, a bunch of young guys, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we can bring up our community. This is what we can do to develop our area. And then you move from there. But you have to put in the work. Nothing is owed to you. You're not going to get anything for free. You have to work for it.
There you have it. Thomas Fadwa.
Yeah,
30 seconds of your last words.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so for me, I think the issue of capital is that, first of all, are you willing to open up your business to the outside world, right? I think the moment that you go and knock on someone's door, you can't hide anything anymore. So I think be ready for that, for that scrutiny, that people are going to be looking at your business very thoroughly. Be prepared to answer those questions. More so, if you then decide to go to the bigger stage of a listing, you really have to address. So there's no secrets there anymore. And I'll say it again that information, I don't remember, we've got an office, we've got a website, but we never get people coming to ask those questions. What does this mean for us and so forth? So the institutions are there to assist entrepreneurs. So go there and ask as many questions as you can. Information is free, like Tino said. No one is going to charge you for wanting to know more about a certain industry. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I would take that.
Yes.
So just very briefly, I would say to the viewers and listeners, good money will follow good ideas.
Wow. Wow. Good money will follow good ideas. And that brings us to the end of this panel discussion. I've heard people say you don't need money to start a business, but you need to start a business to make money. I say to you, based on all this information I heard, because I was also opening my ears wide open and listening to these investors, these people who have the capital to find what they want. And the one thing I got from all of them is you are the capital. It's you who needs to have the volition and take the decisive action to find information, to put some skin in the game, to make it happen, and to pester them at their doors. I think Koma Tafadzwa said, you're not coming to our doors. Make noise, go to the doors, knock, and I guarantee you, you will have capital to start, run, and to definitely grow your business. So this brings us to the end of this amazing session that we had, season 2, episode number 1. We continue to talk in business, and we continue to try and bring in the ethical issues, the moral issues, and give that moral compass to us as entrepreneurs as we run the business. From this esteemed and amazing panel, from the amazing crew that you don't get to see, but thousands of them behind the scenes. Some of them, I can see them smiling behind the cameras. They do a lot of work. And from, of course, from myself, the juggernaut, I'm out.
Thank you.
There were a lot of questions coming through on